Shalom. In the outside the land of Israel, this coming Shabbat, they will be reading the Parashat of Mattot, which we read in the land of Israel last Shabbat. Nevertheless, this is going to be the culmination of many weeks in which we saw a distinction between the land of Israel and outside the land of Israel. Until now, there was some kind of situation that was difficult to distinguish. When they say they would read one parasha, we would read a different one. But now, this week, we are going to come close to each other, because outside the land of Israel they will be reading two parashiot, Mattot and Mas'eh, when in the land of Israel we will be reading just Mas'eh, and then we become equal again. I mean, next week, when the whole world, outside and inside the land of Israel, we shall read the parasha of Devarim. So now we will say a few words about the parasha of Mattot, as well as in the parasha of Mas'eh. Parashat Mattot begins with the following, that וידבר משה אל ראשי המטות לבני ישראל לאמור, זה הדבר אשר ציווה השם. And Moshe spoke to the heads, the tribal heads of the people of Israel, and he told them, this is what God commanded us to do. What is it? Ish ki dor neder, if a man makes a vow, Lashem, to God. When you make a neder, that means you make a vow. It's something that you practically, it's like if you address God himself, because the speech is extremely important. It is a gift that was special, given to the human beings to distinguish them between them and the animals. So it is a real gift directly from God himself. As the Talmud says, Man de nafah midileh kanafah. When God created man, after he made the structure of his body, but now all he needs is the speech. So he blew into his nostrils the power of speech that emanated from God himself. Man de nafah midileh kanafah, which means the speech that we have comes from the breathing of God himself. That's the reason why people have to be very careful before they utter something. We shall discuss this point. Of course, in this parasha we have many other things that we can discuss, but we are limited by time, so we will speak about this and foremost, of course, matter. So again, ish ki dor neder, when someone makes a vow to God, or he shava shevua, or perhaps he swore, le'sor isar al nafsho, to obligate himself. You know, sometimes good people would obligate himself to perform a certain matter of value, a certain commandment, and they know it's difficult for them to do it. So what do? They exhort themselves, they galvanize themselves by swearing that they will do it. Since swearing or making a vow was considered a very serious act, if you don't keep it, if you don't keep your word, it's very bad. Our sages said in the Talmud that many catastrophes could happen in the family if one promises or he swears to do something, or he makes a vow to do something. Then a tragedy could happen in the family. The wife could die, the children could die. Of course, that doesn't mean that it has to be necessarily this way, but we understand that ra'ui, whenever it says that they will die, it means that that's what seems to be the case, that it could happen. All right? So the Torah says, Lo yahel devaro. One has to be very careful not to break his word. ככל היוצא מפיו יעשה. The Torah emphasizes with a tremendous emphasis that he must do all exactly as he expressed verbally. Okay? Which means whatever you said, do what came out from your mouth. ככל היוצא מפיו. What came out of your mouth, whether it is you swore or you made a vow, you have to keep it. As I said it before, because the speech that comes out from the mouth is something that is extremely holy. It's a gift that came directly from God Himself. The animals cannot speak, but we do. We have to appreciate that so much that we have to verify. Before we utter anything, we have to tell ourselves, let's think what I am going to say. This way what I will say will be clean, number one, no obscene language, and of course, if you swear or you promise or you make a vow, you must keep it. Whatever comes out from the mouth of the individual is something that has to be kept, as the Talmud tells us everywhere. And I have explained why. We know that this week's between the 17th of Tammuz and the 9th of Av are 3 weeks that we call, they are known by the name Ben HaMetzarim, between the straits. Now it means, it comes from the word tzara, which means trouble in Hebrew. Those are the 3 weeks in which the Jewish people has suffered long time ago. First by the fact that we lost the temple, Bet HaMikdash, the first time. It happened on the 9th of Av, the month of Av, which was 3 weeks after the 17th of Tammuz. And on the 17th of Tammuz, as we have explained last week, the 17th of Tammuz began the tragedy of the destruction of the temple. And it happened again in the second temple. And because of that, those 3 weeks are considered to be 3 weeks in which the people of Israel don't have a good luck. Which means if they have a problem or they have something, let it settle it after Tisha B'Av. That's when the mazal of the Jewish people is better. But in those 3 weeks, people have to be limited to by not doing many things, such as going to the. I'm not saying that this is forbidden, but people have to be careful. For example, this is times of vacation also, so people they go to the beach. So people have to be careful very much when they go to the beach. They have to be careful. Perhaps it's better not to go at all. Car accidents could happen more in those weeks than any other week. I don't know how much we feel the difference between other days and those days, but I remember a long time ago they educated us to understand that these weeks could be dangerous. Why? Because between the 17th of Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, those are 3 weeks in which we were not very lucky. So there is a certain influence in the hearts of every Jew that those days people have to be very careful, because we are between one trouble and another. It's called in Hebrew Ben HaMetzarim. Between those 2 times in which tragedies have occurred, and as I have explained in past lectures. I wouldn't go back again to it. One of the things that we have to be very careful with it is the speech. Number one has to prevent himself from lashon hara, from speaking ill of his fellow men. It's something that is quite known, that we have to be very careful all year around. But in those 3 days, because these days that could bring things that we do not like, so therefore one has to be very careful. Also, when you talk, then say only good things. Don't say bad things about anybody. There's much more into this, but that's enough. The second thing is obscene language. Unfortunately, this generation is known among the young people to speak with an obscene language, language that is dirty. I mean, perhaps there is nothing wrong with it, but what's wrong is the speech itself. People have to think before they say something. You cannot use, like they say that F word, or all kinds of obscene language. One should not use language that would tell us what is the true identity of the person. Like some of the great sages said that people who do not watch their language, it's a testimony to their own being. That means they are very cheap. But people of great valor, they would always check every word that they say before they say it. But above all, if a person promises, if he makes a promise, you have to fulfill it. Let me introduce here something that perhaps we discussed many times ago. Our sages said, Ima dibur kesef shtika zahav. Dibur means speech. It's a good gift, but our sages gave it the title of silver, which is good, but not better than gold, because they refer to silence, shtika, silence, is gold. Now my question is, how is it possible? I mean, to keep quiet is better than to talk, because you could do so many good things by talking. You could, for example, you could console people. You could help people with a good advice. How can you give a good advice without talking? Teaching Torah, you have to talk. Giving advice, establishing peace between husband and wife, or between two people, you have to talk to them. So we understand that talking is a great blessing, and that's why God gave it to us. But our sages insist that it's still better to keep quiet. I did explain that what they meant is that in case there is a chance that by talking good about someone, you might end up by saying something bad about him, it's better not to say anything. It's better to keep quiet. As it says in the book of Pirkei Avot, Rabban Gamliel used to say, Rabban Shimon Gamliel used to say, that Kol Yamai lo matzati gudalti ben hachachamim, I have been raised among the sages. Velo matzati laguf tov mishetika, and I have found nothing better for the body than keeping quiet. Keeping quiet is a great value, to my humble opinion, when it is necessary. Otherwise, the world cannot exist with just silence. But silence is gold whenever there is a chance that the speech might be the wrong one. Either obscene language, as we have explained, or any kind of talk that might be considered an evil talk. In those 3 weeks, we have to be very careful about this, because somehow the speech of the human being does not disappear. People talk too much because they think it's only talking. It's like breathing. It's only air. That's not true. Our sages said that whatever we say is immediately recorded. When the day comes that we all have to go to heaven one day, after 120, they will bring a tape recorder, a spiritual tape recorder, in which we will hear every single word that we have said throughout our life. When we said good things, it's immediately recorded as a good deed. When it's bad, then we might be not only punished, but we will be very much embarrassed. So therefore, but by the way, if a person, let's say, we did not watch our speech, but now we decided to become better, and we do teshuvah, we repent, then everything is forgiven, everything is erased. Because when you change your character, your nature, you are a different man, you are a different person, and therefore what happened before is erased. That's the great gift of teshuvah, of repentance. Might as well do it in those 3 weeks. This is the time in which we have to think better before we say something. And that's what it says. Lo yahel devaro. The word lo yahel comes from the word chol, secular. So the Torah says, make sure what you say with your mouth is not secular, which means let it be holy. Even if it's not holy, but just something that of no value, it's a pity that you have to say it. There is a Kabbalistical belief that God, everyone has a different kind of length of life. This one dies at with the 100 years of age, the other one much less, the other one more. Everyone has a different calculation. But it says, the Kabbalists say, it all depends how much you spend in talking. The more you talk, the less life you have, because God gave a definite number of years to a person according to how much he talks. If you talk divrei Torah, that will add to your life. I mean, speaking the words of Torah increases the days of your life. If not, if the speech, which is a gift of God, is used for vain purposes, for nothing, it's a big waste, and that could end up costing days of life. In days like the days between the 17th of Tammuz and the 9th of Av, in which life anyway is somehow in some kind of danger, one has to be more careful. That's what it says. By the way, ככל היוצא מפיו יעשה. Whatever you say, do it. Do not change your word. People who change their promise, do not keep their promises, they demonstrate the fact that they are not much, that there is no importance in them. The real importance of a person is watch how he speaks. The way people talk, that's the way they show who they are. This is a good lesson. To my humble opinion, it's a very important one. Say it and repeat it again to your friends and whoever wants to listen. With this, I wish you Shabbat Shalom. But